Thanks for joining us today as we dig into practical theology, and that is, you are not normal, and that's good, otherwise known as...
I'm different on purpose.
On purpose. This is a little bit different of a subject that we're going to be delving in today. We've been going over a lot of different pop culture things, different movies, and looking for Christian themes in it. We also have in the past gone over a lot of apologetics, support for Christianity, and also just doing this as a basis to pull those themes out of movies and to use those as a message for the gospel. But this is more of a, like, speaking to you directly as a Christian. If you're not a Christian, cool, check this out, whatever, see what's going on here. And there's also hope for you. To say that you are not normal and that's good is not an accusation. It is not an abstract claim that you're not normal. Statistically speaking, none of us are 100% normal. In any way, 100%. Well, there's probably one person in the whole world that is 100% absolutely in the median for all things. Normal, average height, average weight, average everything.
Wow, that must be boring.
Well, I don't know if I'd say boring, but so statistically speaking, none of us are absolutely normal. But I'm not talking about just the physical appearance and things like that. I'm talking about how we relate to the world that we're in. Do you ever feel like you don't fit in, that you're bobbing your head to a different beat, a beat that most people don't hear? Is there any value in standing apart in the world driven by conformity? Well, let me put that question to you and to you in the chat. Is there any value in standing apart from where everybody else is going, the direction that everybody else is heading, being a part of the crowd? Is there any value in that at all?
Yeah.
What's that?
What do you mean, what's that? It counts on what you're standing on.
Okay.
What your morals, what's the foundation that you're standing on? If it's biblical principles, it's not going to move, even though the world goes through ebbs and flows.
Okay. So I guess it depends on what the crowd is that you're talking about going with it. We've all had these different situations, whether we're in school or something, you got a bunch of kids that you're hanging out with and they start doing something, you think, man, should I be doing that? And then standing out from the crowd. I guess in that kind of situation, that's one of the examples that you would be talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, if need be. It counts on what the situation is. It's a very generalized question.
So deciding whether to go with the flow or not, you can either make your decision based on, I want to be a part of what's going on. I want to be with everybody else. I want to get the accolades from people. I want to be told that I'm just like them. I want to be like them. Is that my goal? Or is my goal to say I'm making my decision based on a standard, and that standard doesn't change?
Yeah, so it's
what the crowd
question if the crowd is going with the standard or not.
Okay, so that would be the basis for it or not. We have being different from the crowd, particularly in a Christian, is not only natural, it's necessary. Looking at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, that says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So we have this standard that we're called to do. We're not to be conformed to the world. We're not to be just wrapped up like a mold pressed in. There's something else that's going on here. The type of morality and spiritual discernment God calls his children to does not change with the current year. What's the current year? You've heard that phrase before. Whether the year is 2024 AD or 2024 BC, the rules are the same. Hebrews 12 verses, if I can get to it. Thank you. Hebrews Thank you.
I'm hoping the rest of the people.
I see the screen. I don't see what
sees it. You guys
anybody
don't.
else doesn't see it. Hebrews 12 verses 1 and 2 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. For the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and seated at the right hand of the throne of God." So this live stream is intended to be encouragement for believers and a possibility for unbelievers that, one, you are not alone in this battle. This was just as we read in Hebrews chapter 12, we are surrounded by other saints who have gone before us. Number two, God forbids us to be conformed to this world, but in so doing, we are transformed into something better. And three, this is only temporary. It gets darkest before the dawn. The sun, S-O-N, is coming. Now, have you ever, I'm going to say this as a direction to the chat, and I'm going to be checking this. It looks like we have a few comments out there. Have you ever felt like you were fighting the spiritual battle alone? And
yes,
I'm going to turn that to you. How, in what way have you felt that?
I think that's one of the strongest weapons the enemy uses. Is you're all alone. No one else is doing this. Why are you standing up for this, or why are you like this when everyone else around you must be seeing something else? And it would be so much easier just to go with it.
Oh yeah, to go with the flow. We got a couple of comments here. One is from Francis. Good morning, Francis. He says exactly, and hello at John Newton Sci-Fi, and separating from everyone in certain aspects can be necessary. And I don't know if you want to, I know that you have personal experience with this too, and standing out and making a choice that separates yourself even further than some people do. Sometimes if you're in a crowd of, you just hang out with Christians all the time, and they're strong believers or they're walking in faith, you don't necessarily need to stand out from the crowd too much. But when you're in a different situation, when you're alone like that, that would make it that much harder. And I don't know if you want to share this might be a good opportunity to share some testimony if you want. We can do that, is to say where you're from. What kind of situations have you guys in the chat come across where you've had to make the stand, where you've had to separate yourself from the world and said, I can't go that way? I'd be curious to say, in what way couldn't you go that direction? In what way did you make that stand? While that's coming up, I will say, I can share it, but we're not set up for, can we do?
You can do call-in. I hope there's no echo, because we're not set up for that.
We're not set up, but we can even share with the, I got this here. We don't have the splitter, but we do have this. Would you mind setting? We are not thinking about this, but this might be a good idea. I didn't even think about this. We're doing this spontaneously. I gotta have the gear. What's that?
I gotta have the gear.
I know. But that's just that one thing. So we can set this up. What I'd like to do is just, because it's so difficult on something like this to try to do it with the chat, read somebody's comments in this regard. What we're going to do is we're going to make this available to, thank you, to for those of you who want to call in.
Links in the live chat.
The link is in the live chat, yes. And you can click on that and we can put you up. Now, this is regards just specifically to your own personal stories about how you had to stand up against the conformity of the world. How you're saying, hey, listen, I couldn't go that way. And you're doing it for Christ, not just for some other reason, but you're doing it for Christ. And yeah, the story here that we have, Francis is cool. And I'm going to put this up. He says, I had to make a stand, and like I do daily as a brown Christian and ex-Muslim, I separated in every way. dude, I don't even look at you as you say brown. It's just like, you got the tan I want. What are you talking about? You know?
He's saying he's not pasty white like you are.
Oh, shut That is true. That is true. But it's a good testimony. You got it in all the way?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're going to try it without this. All right. So I'm going to keep on moving along then. Have you felt like you were fighting the spiritual battle alone? And we got one here. It says, I'm coming up, brother. Just getting off the bus. Okay. All right. All right. We'll do that. And as we do, I'm just going to continue to move on with the rest of the program. And to bring up something called groupthink and herd mentality. So is there such a thing as groupthink? There is really a definition in psychology for this. It's a psychological phenomenon where the desire for harmony or conformity results in an irrational, dysfunctional decision making. Well, the whole thing about dysfunctional in terms of secular psychology, that's kind of out the window, because they agree about some things that you and I would look at and say, you guys are nuts. Transgender? What are you talking about? Chopping off body parts? No, stop it. That's evil. That's wrong. But the desire for conformity is there. So examples of herd mentality. Historical examples where following the crowd led to negative outcomes could be like the rise of totalitarian regimes, or in order for a dictator to take position or take power, usually it's for people to do nothing about it or even support that person taking power. You can think of the typical one that everybody thinks about is Hitler. What did it take for his rise to power? And you did have a group think that was behind this. Economic bubbles, like the dot-com bubble in 2000 or 2007 with the crash that was precipitated largely by real estate. Everybody was jumping in, and I wouldn't say everybody, but there was a huge rush in for real estate. For the dot-com bubble, it was getting into tech. Everybody's making all this money on tech. It's coming. You go in, go get your hair cut, and the barber is talking about how he's investing in all these different things and says he's making all this money. He says, when something like that happens, get ready for a crash, because you have that kind of mad enthusiasm is behind it. Social movements leading to moral decline. Can you think of anything, any social movement, even now or historically in the past, that has led to a decline, moral decline?
The LGBTQ AAIP silent FU group.
Yeah. So hence the thumbnail where you have this guy who is standing out. He is standing apart. He's not a part of the group mentality that ends up just being a clown world type of, holy cow, they're going off the cliff. Yeah, it's progress, but you guys are all in this clown bus and you're just heading for the cliff. You're going to be launching off. You're all going to die. Stop it. Get off the bus.
Yeah, progress. The question is, where are we going to?
Where are you progressing? Yeah. Which direction are you heading? So checking the chat says groupthink. Andrew Martin mentioned that groupthink is very persuasive. And he said fluoridation of water is pervasive in New Zealand and the West, and it's totally wrong. I have heard of problems with this. I don't know. It did seem like a very good thing about treating the teeth, and then possibly problems with bone loss and other things that are going on because of the fluoridation. I don't have to personally worry about that because I have well water and I don't fluoridate my water. So there is that. And then
the alphabet community.
Oh, and then he fluoride water supply is mass medication. Yeah. Here's an idea of how many things in the past we look at just on the medical side have been like, oh, this is great. This is a good thing. It's been proven to be good. Let's do it for everyone. Fluoridation is one. You can think about the use of lead, even in the Roman Empire, using that for plumbing and drinking, eating your utensils, your cups. using lead for that.
That radioactive water.
Radioactive water was a bit of a trend for a while, right?
Yep. It was health water.
Ugh.
It was healthy to drink radioactive water.
Yeah, no, not at all. And then he mentions also, man, you're on a roll here, dude. Alphabet community, like we said, 2020 medical intervention. to my YouTube overlords, I have no idea of which he is speaking about inoculation that this could be talking about whatsoever. Yes, we can say it now, by the way. Lead pipes by Romans. Yes. Yes, radioactive dials for watches. That was the.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
The women that were.
That was World War One.
Was it one or two?
It was one.
Was it one? Okay. Where they were, you had the ladies that were painting the numbers on the dials.
Yeah. For watches.
So you can read it at night.
And you can read it because it was just dim enough for a soldier to be able to read it at night, but not bright enough to give away their position.
Yes. And the women would do this in order to get finer painting on it, to get it more precision and not just a blob, to do a good job with the painting. They would often use their mouths to make the brush finer.
Yep.
And dip it in, and then they would get the.
Oh yeah, there was a lady, I forget her name, but there's a lady that died of radiation poisoning. Basically, her bones started just decaying.
Yeah.
Or basically just mouth fell apart.
Oh yeah, gosh,
nasty.
Yeah, I remember. I've seen some pictures of some of the stuff that's
Our
come from
bones
that.
Still radioactive.
Oh wow. My father grew up in a time when smoking was considered cool and prescribed by doctors. Yes, and Coca-Cola did have Coke. So we can go through all this. And that's just on the medical side, where it's not so much just the trend, although it was very trendy. It was also those who were supposed to be educated were the ones that were saying, "Go do this." It was the thing, right? Yep. And if you want to be healthy, do this. I'm wondering how many medical practices we have now, how many things we do that end up not being good. How many times did we hear, you didn't hear it so much, but I did when I was growing up, that eggs were bad for you. Eggs were good. Eggs were bad. Cholesterol. Eggs are good. And it went back and forth. It's like you throw up your hands eventually and say, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And I guess that's why they call it a practice. Not to say the medical profession is all bunk. There's some very good doctors out there. There are some very good practices. So that all depends on where you're coming from. One last mention from Andrew. He says he was prescribed it, smoking with his father. He says he was prescribed it, and I tried vainly to get addicted to it. Luckily, he tried vainly to get addicted to it. Luckily, he failed. So that's a good thing. So we're going back to talk about how personal stories about how not conforming with society or conforming with a particular group that you're with is a good thing, how that's handling out. And it looks like Francis is ready. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him up. Good morning. Let's see.
Good afternoon.
Is it afternoon for you?
It is afternoon, yes.
Okay. Didn't know with the time change. And it looks like you're outside.
I am. I was on my way back home. So while I was watching your stream on the bus, I just got off. I am in the middle of London. Hence why I thought, okay, get off and speak to you guys. I'm just I just came around in the area just to converse with you guys, basically. So yes,
cool.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Good. So you have your own personal testimony, and I want to respect your privacy and what you want to share with this. And it's the floor is for you. How would you like to tell us your story?
Okay. Story in regards to how do I separate myself, or would you? Because I want to stick to the topic that you have given, brother. So when you talk about the separation of how I separate myself from one ideology, and that was in the basis of, because when I see, especially back in Pakistan, what happens is that you sort of are mangling in a society where if people are celebrating some destruction that's happening in their country, supposedly in America or Israel. So when you have something like extreme like this happening, and then you separate yourself in the society where you say, why is this happening? I do not want to celebrate this. But you're told to keep your mouth shut for your own security. So even that at that time you separate yourself because you're not part of the society. And then the difference that happened, the different thing that happened in my life basically was obviously when you become a Christian. That's a huge separation again, because then you are setting yourself apart from everything. Then you're being, now because you're a Christian, you have to set an example and be an example for everyone around you. So for being as Christ-like as possible. So that's how I'll separate myself even further for all the sins that I was in. It is a very different, it's a very different life. It's a very unique way to live when it comes to, as a Christian that I'd speak about, because you do not, like, I never knew like there would be some verse in any shape or form which would say, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." And you're like, it's unfathomable, and it's like you want to build peace with everyone no matter what, because you believe that everyone's made in the image of God. And that's somehow really, like, it baffled me more and more, because I was like, there's so much love in one aspect that separates us from all the humanity, because everyone's like, now it's just all about me, it's all about everyone, everyone that I surround with, I take everyone collectively as a community now. I uphold everyone at the same value and the same level, and there's no selfishness, and that's how you separate yourself. And then when around, you see flags, like LGBTQ flags, like everywhere. And then when you see that, which I'll show you guys, so that's what's happening, right? And this is what you see.
Francis,
So-
could you? We're having a little bit difficulty hearing you. I don't sure if it's the microphone's away from your mouth, or if you could maybe speak up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
All right, brilliant. So yeah, I just wanted to show that I'm walking around London. Basically, I am what you call just around on the Oxford Circus station, that area. So what I wanted to say is basically how we separate ourselves entirely is what makes us different. It's like separation, and separation when you become a Christian, or separation when you become an ex-Muslim too. When you realize that, you know what, you're not going to be the same in the society as you were, because now you have you have to carry yourself differently, because you're not a Muslim anymore. And if anyone gets to know of this, and anyone who's extreme, what can you do? So that's what makes us such a pastor different, because we have to mold ourselves in the society where, for our own sanity, for our own protection. And that's just how you separate yourself. And you're like, but why? And then you realize you have to, because you don't have a choice in a society. But then when you become a Christian, that's a huge different level of separating, because that's when you realize you separate yourself even further in life. Separating in regards to your ideas, your mannerisms, your love for the people. You do not have anything against anyone. You forgive. You do not hold grudges. You speak to someone if you have any qualms or any issues with them, rather than holding them. So there's so many different things and so many levels, especially when you use, even with the way you eat, can be so different. Like, you bless every food you do. You bless every food before you eat, right? That's all these things that we do. But not many people did this. Not many Muslims would do that. You know, like when they would read Bismillah, they would do that. But not many do that either. You know what I mean? That's what the difference is. So I just wanted to show that this is what we see over here, like the flags over here, like this. So because it's Pride Month. So
Oh, yeah.
that's what I wanted to show. Like basically, oh yeah, I'm literally at Oxford Street. You see the sign. I think, yeah, there we go. Oxford Street right now. One of the busiest streets in London, very touristy. So that's what I wanted to show. Even in this society, all of these things happen, but we don't have hate for them. And that's again what separates us in the society. Because they want to be different, they want to be unique in a negative way, while we try to be unique in a godly way. And that's how the separation talk happens. This is why I'm sorry I'm taking too much time about this, but I'm trying to be as concise as possible for you to know how your stream. So this is why I was gonna say, yeah. Just there we are. There we are, all the flags like this that you see, and it's all around Oxford Circus, like that's why Regent Street. So that street that goes through there is Regent Street. So that's it. Basically, you see all of these flags all the way through Regent Street, and nobody bats an eyelid because it's just normal. It's just the way it is, and nobody cares. But the thing is, they just shove it on people's faces for you to see. Oh, look, this is here, right? It's all the way through, from multiple through Regent Street. You will see all of this. It's sort of a separation tactic, but even then, how many people are looking at it? Not many people are interested, are there? So, yeah. Is there anything else you want to ask further? I'm sorry, I've taken too much, but
no. This is good because you have a unique perspective in that you just mentioned you have 2 degrees of separation at least, but 2 major degrees of separation. One was that you walked away from Islam, and you do have a large number of people that have walked away from Islam, but they stay in atheism. Oh, I think we just lost him. Okay, so for Francis, you have 2 different levels. You have the first level of walking. There we go. He's back. Walking away from atheism is the first level, but people can tend to stay in that and say they reject everything with God. But then you took the next step, which is drawing closer to Christ, becoming a Christian, and then that made that another level of separation because you're also separating from the society that has rejected God. And now, when you see these flags tend to be, especially in warfare, are an establishment of authority. It's like this nation now has authority and dominion over this. You have to listen to our laws and decrees and what we say. You're a part of this society. When you see flags like that all the way down the street, they're saying, we have dominion over you. We have authority over you like that. And so as a Christian, you got to separate from that.
This is where I say, like, if you see, like, all the way through the flag, everywhere you see, like, if you go any store now, I will show you some stores as well, just to give you an example, that how they like to shove this on your face. That's why I've got the camera on the side like this, to show you, basically, the difference. There are some shops who don't have this label, don't get me wrong, but there are many shops who are really, really on it. Like, they just want to shove it on your face. So supposedly Molten Brown is a huge brand for shower gels in the UK, and especially it's quite well known around the whole world now. But if you see Molten Brown, the shop.
Oh yeah.
So look at that, all the flags. Like, why do we need to know all these flags? Like, what are you celebrating? All these different identities just for no reason. Like, do you see? Like, it was such a reserved, conservative company before when it started, and now it's just all of this. So when you see stuff like this, please.
I was going to say on this side of the pond, we have the same thing going on.
Oh yeah.
Here, where boy, that street is terrible with the flag. It's just everywhere, like you say. It's just like in your face. Yeah. Not just 1 or 2 flags; it's the entire street.
Yeah. It's the entire street. Now, see, Like it's all going all the way through. So it's
Yeah.
literally all the way to the turn. It's a
Right.
quite long street. It's a region street. So it's one of the most busiest shopping hub of the entire London. So yeah,
Okay.
like that's Liberty.
Wow.
We have Liberty also with the flag.
So
So
in Revelation 13, it talks about accepting the mark of the beast. You cannot buy or sell unless you basically bow your knee to the Antichrist. And I don't believe this is the specific mark of the beast. However, it is a mark that people are making, and it's like it's a part of our commerce, right? Unless you bow your knee to this, then you're going to be ostracized. You're not going to be a part of the community, and you may not even be. You may lose your job unless you conform to this.
yeah, exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? So if you want to do something, agree with us, or you are ostracized. If you do not agree with us, you will be cancelled, your job's taken away, your livelihood's taken away. You can't do this or this or this unless you say yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That's it. And I'm noticing all of these things. But the thing is, but when the Muslims say it, like the Muslims have disagreements, right? With the LGBTQ. If they say it in London in a company, that's okay because that's their religion. But if a Christian says it, they're immediately ostracized. They're cancelled. But Muslims, no, we have to be tolerant of them because it's their religion. And you're like, why? So
Yeah. So sometime in the future, I'd love to be able to sit down with you and talk about the difference that Islam would approach this question and how Christianity would approach it. We would be, I guess, Muslims and Christians would be on the same side saying, no, this is wrong.
yes.
But then beyond that, how one group approaches it versus the other group. It'd be a very interesting discussion if we could sit down and talk about this sometime.
Yeah, one group cut off the head. The other one won't.
Eric says it would be a very short discussion. Yeah, one group would cut off the head and the other would not. So,
oh yeah, that's true. That is very true. One group will just immediately say, if you say no to this, you will know what we can do to you. And then one other group says, God bless you, we are tolerant, we still love you. Literally. So yeah, but Eric is absolutely right.
yep. All right. Well, I appreciate your input. This is great, and it's also good to see the streets of London. I've never been there. I've always wanted to go.
Well, here we are, brother, to show you the streets of London. And that's the major street of London where you can find all sorts of shops that you find in America. Nothing is any different over here. But if you want to see anything about Macy's, then you would see like Bond Street. So that's equivalent to Bond Street, basically.
Yeah.
And I can take you there one day if you want. I can showcase you around, but this is Regent Street. And that's it, brother.
All right.
I'm glad I was able to show you all of this. So keep in your prayers, brother. And God bless you. And God
Absolutely.
bless you, brother in
And by
Christ.
the way, keep up the good work. I appreciate what you're doing. Fantastic. I'm glad to see you out there and your channel's doing great.
Thank you so much. But keep me in your prayers, brother. And I'm inviting you soon anyways. But I've thought of a topic. I have written everything down. I'm going to email it to you. And we're definitely going to converse about it. And also my baptism's coming up on Saturday. I just wanted to pin that out to please keep me in your prayers as I'm very looking forward to it. I've been to my church. I've had all the things done. So God bless. Just keep me in your prayers. And everyone I request as well. Keep me in your prayers. God bless you, brothers. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, that was unexpected. Good. But here you have an example showing that you're not alone. And even if you are in a Christian community that's is surrounded by Christians, there is still a battle to make sure that you fight, because we all struggle with sin, and you have people within the church that will head a certain direction that they shouldn't. And so you need to make the stand there. And we can think of more examples. I think if we had everybody's testimony that was given of points in their life where they had to make a stand and felt very much like they were alone. The message here is you are not alone. And There's a phrase that is used to say, well, you're on the wrong side of history. You look at it and say, you're on the wrong side of eternity. You look at it from the perspective of eternity. Dude, if you're walking with Christ, you're on the right side of eternity. Eventually, it all will all work out. So we do have this groupthink of that's going on. Oops, I believe we're still here. Groupthink and herd mentality. We just saw a whole lot of example of this. This herd mentality, all this philosophy, this sin that is pervasive, not only in London, the streets of London that we saw there, but also here in the US and many other parts of the Western world, where I look back and I think, are we lost our minds?
Well, I think another thing that Francis pointed out that I think is pretty powerful is it's just normalized. It's just what it is.
Okay.
It's just people just walking by. Who cares? No one's noting it.
You do eventually. What can you do? Can you pull them down? Can you?
That would be hate speech.
Well, yeah, and Andrew Martin mentioned the fact that this is a lot like pre-World War II Germany, where you see the flags, the Nazi flags, like just coming down.
would disagree. I'd say this is more like active World War II Paris.
Oh, where they were taken over.
Where they were taken over and they hung flags everywhere. And in all the historical pictures you see of there, you see Nazi flags everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can have an entire multiple shows just talking about this one topic.
Yeah, and that's just how how if you conquer a society, you show your dominance.
Right. And that's a good segue to the second part, talking about moral shifts. Let's look at the changes of moral standards over the last 100 years. Shifts in sexual ethics would be the first thing. In the 1920s, the rise of the flapper culture and sexual liberation hit the streets. You had this idea of being free, sexual liberty, that you could go ahead and have sex outside of marriage, and it's freeing. It's liberating. You can have it's stupid. In the 1960s, you had the sexual revolution, which took it another step. Introduction of birth control and the concept of free love. Love is free and easy, and no one gets hurt, until you had STDs like AIDS pop around the next 10, 20 years, and then that pandemic came through. In the 2000s, you had to the present, you have the acceptance of LGBTQ plus whatever. A sin, you can call it lifestyles, it's sin, and same-sex marriage is now. We have gone from in the 70s, it was concerning homosexuality. You said get the government out of our bedrooms because it was illegal. They said get the government out of our bedrooms. Okay, fine, we'll do that. And then it became something where you have to accept me. So it became something was socially acceptable. Then it was condoned that you have to. It was legalized, and now it's sanctioned. So we've gone from just being personal privacy, leave me alone, to acceptance, to condoning, and then legalizing, and now promotion. The very fact that we see the streets like that going down, this is not just in your bedroom anymore. This is
in your face.
In your face. And I have been challenged in a work environment before to say, you have to accept this. HR looking at a group of us and saying, this is the way things are. You have to accept these people. Now, here's the difference with Christianity is you love the sinner, and the sin, and you hate the sin because the sin is destroying them. You look at transgenderism, how it is ripping people's bodies apart.
Extremely destructive.
And I'm not loving and tolerant if I just pat someone on the back and say, go ahead and transition because you're going to be sterile. You're going to have all sorts. You're going to be, you have to take these drugs for the rest of your life. You're going to not be 100% functional as the other sex. It doesn't work that way. You cannot do it. If a guy transitions to a woman, I'm going to get kicked off YouTube. If a guy transitions to a woman, he's not going to be able to have babies.
Nope.
It's not going to work.
Part of the process.
And even if you are able to implant a fertilized egg into a guy that it somehow starts utilizing his blood flow, it's not the same. It's not the same thing on more than just a physical level, also an emotional and spiritual level too. It's not the same thing. So there's also been a shift in the family structure. In the early 20th century, nuclear family was the norm. By the mid 20th century, increase in divorce rates in single-parent households. I remember there was a real sweep in the 1970s. After the sexual liberation, sex is free and no one gets hurt. Right. Abortion, 1973. Rise of a divorce in the late 70s. My mother was divorced during that time. And then in the 21st century, you have diverse family structures, including cohabitation without any marriage and not even wanting to have children at all. So now we have a decline in birth rate. We have an actual problem with birth rate, not even replacement birth rate anymore. Shift in religious practice. In the early 20th century, predominantly Christian society with high church attendance. Mid to late 20th century, rise of secularism, decline in church attendance. In the 21st century, increasing pluralism. Have you heard of the nuns?
The nuns.
The nuns.
The nuns. Well, I know of the abbots and the nuns.
Okay, we're not talking NUN like Catholic nuns. We're talking about NONES. These are no religious affiliation, and that would be a category that would people would check. Kind of not, because it's more of a spiritualism. It's like all the above type of thing.
Oh, I see.
And we're talking about Star Wars with the influence that Star Wars has had in society. This is kind of part of the piece of the puzzle that goes into this. That, it's a force, I believe, and there's some higher power, but not necessarily
acronyms and stuff.
Well, it's a rejection of institutionalized religion as part of it too, and this is now a category of its own. So I'm going to check. It looks like we're rolling here in the chat. We got some comments going. Paris, I'm going to put this other up here. Thank you from Francis. And then, yes, Paris, 1940s, visitors from Germany because the N-word is censored. The N-word is not a racially based word, but it's another type of word. Okay. As Jordan Peterson would say, define normal. That's a good question. So with the
define.
So with the title of this, or showing this as standing apart, and you are not normal, that you are. So the definition normal would be the statistical mean. So normal in physical appearance, normal in income, normal in what you believe. But more importantly, what we're talking about here is normal in what you believe, going with the flow. You are in the middle of the road. You are a moderate of moderates in all things. And we had talked about before the Overton, what's called the Overton window. Do you remember what that was?
No.
Okay. The Overton is called the Overton shift. And that is you have the political, and I'm going to do this so it's the other way around here. You have the political right for you guys watching, and the political left, right? And you have the moderates here in the middle.
Shifted so far.
And so you have this shift, and although maybe the right's gone a little bit more to the right, you have the left has gone way off the cliff. So I'm off the screen now. You can't see this. It's more like this. And so now what was the middle has now being looked at as being right leaning or extreme right, which what 20, 30, 40 years ago would have been dead center moderate is now considered right wing or extreme right wing.
Yep.
So that's the shifting that we're talking about in political. And you can see it's also a shift, the same type of shift in morality, where things that are considered normal or supposed to be even 10 years ago would have been considered kind of out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go back 10 years and tell them about all this transitioning stuff, and they'll call you nuts.
I would not have even considered, if you would have asked me,
Just look at the mantras they use as time goes on, how it is shifted.
Mm.
And they would have, the lefties now would condemn what their predecessors would have said, and vice versa.
Correct. That you would have looked at, you think of Barack Obama being left wing. Well, he was pro traditional family when he took office.
Yep.
And even Hillary Clinton. We tried to stay away from getting political on this channel altogether, but we're talking more specifically about morality, how that has changed over time. So I want to show you a chart, a change of moral values in the past 50 years by U.S. generation. And this was particularly interesting and worthy to talk about for just a minute. Hopefully it's not too small that you could read the type on here. But basically we're looking at the change of perception of morality. We're looking to say, asking the question, have moral values changed for the better or for the worse? And so you have 4 different answers here. It could change for the better, change for the worse. Morals values have changed, but it hasn't made much difference. It makes, I don't know. And then you have a not sure category there. So the first, by and large, most people think that there has been a change for the worse. And I was surprised when I saw this. This was from the website Statista. And I'd have to sign up to be able to get their sources from this. But if they are correct in saying this, you see that huge surge right there in the middle, change for the worse. Most people think it is. Now, it's broken down by generation. You have the silent generation, those who fought in World War II, those probably in their 80s, 70s, 80s. I'm not sure if you'd have 78% of them believe that it's been for the worse. 77% of boomers believe it's been for the worse. 70% of Gen X, that'd be my generation, say it is for the worse. And millennials, only 54%, but still surprisingly.
This is very interesting here. If you're looking at the chart, so change for the worse. The oldest generation, most of them say it's changed for the worse. The next down, the boomers, still high, but not as high as the oldest generation. Gen X below them, and then millennials below them. You look at the change for the better, it's the inverse. Most of the millennials, a higher number of millennials say it's changed for the better as to the older generations. And it goes back, the older you get, the less they think it's changed for the better.
Yeah. And change for the better is, like you say, the most is millennials. But even then, it is only 19% are saying it's. I would have thought that would have been much higher than what it was. So if these stats are correct, and they could be wrong, most people, even millennials, say that things have gotten worse. Now, the millennials also say on this chart, you also notice that they're the highest in saying, hey, it really hasn't changed much at all. But those are very small variations there. It could be just lost in the noise. But they don't have Gen Z on here. I wish they did, because from what I've read, Gen Z is tending to be more conservative even than millennials.
Well, it's a sort of rebellion thing. So we've gone so far to the left now. The only thing left to be a rebellion is to be on the right.
Right.
To be conservative, to have those principles that the silent generation valued the most.
Okay, so Andrew Martin mentioned, says, I am pleased by this chart, shows a huge latent for the good. So yeah, like I said, if this chart is correct, I'm surprised. Most people are saying this is not good. So that means most of those people walking down the streets of London that we just saw, looking up those flags, ignoring it, they feel like, I can't do anything about that. I don't like it. I don't like what's going on, but I can't do anything about it. I wonder how many people walked down the streets in Weimar, Germany before the Nazism took over, before World War II, before Hitler, saw these things happening and said, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, nowadays, many people use them as a point of condemnation.
Condemnation?
Condemnation.
Yeah.
Being,
Yeah.
hey, well, you don't want to be like these people here that just walk down without saying anything.
Consequences of conformity. So talking about the people who just let these things happen, the dangers of following the crowd, biblical warnings against conformity. So we're going to look at some scriptures here. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We just looked at that for Romans, but there's also another verse in Exodus 32 verse 2, 23 verse 2 says, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. In Psalm 1 verses 1 and 2 it says, blessed is the man who walks in the counsel of the wicked, who does not,
I was about ready to say that sounds off.
That not is important. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of scoffers. By the way, that's a progression. It does not stand in the way of sinners, sit in the seat of scoffers. It's like showing how he's just getting down. He's being comfortable within the crowd. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. So we can look at historical consequences for this. We mentioned Nazi Germany, mass conformity leading to the Holocaust, and in other things, slavery and racial segregation supported by social norms. How many people just would have walked by what was happening then and say, "Oh, I can't do anything about it. This is the way it's been."
Well, slavery was since basically the beginning of humanity.
It's not just something in the United States, or not just something in the 19th century. It's been something that's been going along.
Even the newer version of chattel slavery. I mean, that started back in the 6th century. Really started taking on back then. So it's something that's been around, even popular for quite a while.
Now you say the 6th century. How was that?
Muhammad industrialized it.
Muhammad industrialized slavery. Did he industrialize it from any particular location?
Middle East.
Okay.
Went down into Africa, took the African slaves. That's why whenever we researched the Atlantic slave trade versus the
Eastern.
The Arab slave trade, it's like a 90 to 10 percentile difference. It was, so like if you had slaves coming from Africa, 90% of them were going to the Middle East. 10% of them were going to the Americas in general. And you had a fatality rate of slaves that were going to the Americas, not just to the United States, but to America in general, of about 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 out of 10 slaves would die on that journey. When you're talking about going to the Arab nations, it was 1 out of 9 survived.
Wow. And they
So
also
it was a
castrated the guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Clippy guys. And then the women, the majority were women who were sold into sex slaves who, if they got pregnant and had a kid, they were executed.
Wow. Well, but you do. So the point here, though, is that you would have people that walk by and say that's part of society and just
it's part of the culture.
It's
what it's always been.
And so that as Christians, we stand by and say, I will not conform to that. I'm going to be transformed by the renewing of mind, by the power of the Holy Spirit. So are there modern examples of cultural acceptance that are going on right now that besides what we just saw in London there, what other examples are there of just going with the flow to say, this is the thing, this is now normalized, this is the new normalization or new normal?
Abortion would have been a big one.
Abortion's a big one.
I'd say we have definitely gained ground on that, at least somewhat, with the overturn of in the United States with the overturn of Roe v. Wade,
right?
Which still is crazy. It actually got overturned.
I was surprised
because that was assumed, and we had so many people saying that's the law of the land. That's
right.
Just what it is, right? It's never going to get overturned, and then it was overturned.
So Thomas Hall mentioned C.S. Lewis remarked on the Church of England emptying out when it became non-mandatory. Truth is, nuns always existed for generations. Now they are just being honest. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Jesus did say that the way is narrow, and you do have people that would give lip service to conformity just because if it's something that's required or something that they don't do it, where is if you are persecuted as a church, then you're going to try that much harder to be. Look at the church in China.
Oh yeah,
how
massively growing.
How it would grow there, but I'm not sure if. I would say there is definitely more of a. It is definitely more of a cultural thing to accept. At least when it's a part of the culture, when Christianity is a part of the culture, a deep part of the culture. Maybe you can rail against it. Maybe say, "Oh, it's a bunch of bunk," whatever. But at least there's something that people strive for more. That they try to be. I believe. Now, this is just a personal opinion, so I can be totally wrong on that. And he said in the UK, electrons. This is censored. Okay. Maybe he's saying elections. Electrons. I think he's trying to be. Rage Against the Machine. Okay, he's okay. Quoting that directly. So there we do have modern. There's another thing in modern accept something is growing in acceptance besides transgenderism is euthanasia.
Oh yes, that's become unfortunately
sadly so in
Canada.
My gosh.
Canada's accepting it.
Our brothers up north has just really kind of gone nuts there. So there's an album here that I want to show. This was a big thing. Keith Green. I don't know if you've ever heard him. He was a Christian artist in the 1980s. This is one of his album covers, and you can see here the guy that chooses not to conform. This album's name was No Compromise. That you stand up for what you believe in. Stand up for Christ no matter what the circumstances. How tough the persecution is going to be. How much would you be willing to lay down? Right now, you can be socially ostracized to say you're not going to be a part of the group unless you bow the knee. There is a time coming, and there has been times in the past, and some places currently in the world right now, where if you make that stand, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your livelihood. You're going to lose your family, just as like Francis was talking about here for him personally. You can lose all these things. At some point, you're going to lose your life because you're making that stand for Christ. How much would we be willing to do that? How far will we be willing to go? Cultural decline and sexual deviancy. We've already looked at a bunch of this. Can you think of any nation or kingdom that had a marked cultural decline and sexual deviancy before its fall?
Rome
would be a good one.
Rome was pretty obvious one.
So the Roman Empire, particularly during the later stages, saw significant changes in social and moral norms. There was an increase in hedonistic lifestyle, including widespread adultery, prostitution, and acceptance of homosexual relations. The moral fabric of society weakened as sexual excesses became more normalized. Now, in terms of family, traditional family and marriage, those structures were undermined, and there was a decrease in importance for the lifelong monogamous marriage. Divorce rates increased, and stability of the family unit deteriorated. Most of the time when you hear about the fall of the Western Roman Empire, you think of, the barbarians came in, there was stuff like that. There was a lot of other
the only reasons they were there was because of the decay that already happened.
Well, there were other reasons. You had like what was happening in the Far East of migrants coming in, but it was able to break through because I think of it like osteoporosis. Now you have an older person, usually women, have the deterioration of their skeletal structure, their bones, and you break your hip easily. You can break bones very easily because you no longer have that structure there. The same thing can be said about the gutting of the family. As the family is being gutted, that framework upon which society is built, first God, and then you have the family there too, that family structure. As that decays, you no longer have the support for the rest of society. It just breaks apart because of it.
It's interesting because they can go through and they know when in Roman history, certain, like they'll go through and look at the armors, and you can date the armors by what materials they made out of and how good the quality of craftsmanship is, because you see the degradation because the culture around it was no longer sustaining it. So you see it go worse and worse. And by the time the barbers came in, they're already dealing with incredibly inferior armor and weaponry than what they would have had at Rome's peak. So
I got a couple of comments here. One from Thomas Hall. He says, polls amuse me. Who are these people changing their views wildly from one year to the next? I may change nuance, but I'm glad I have a foundation. Yeah, that's a good question. Who are these? Well, you see the generations that they tend to hold more to what their values are for that particular generation. So as we hand off we got to be very careful on how we handle. We train our children that they have the values that we've been given. And I'm going to put this as Anthony Bloom's father stated, it's not whether or not you got injured or even if you died, but what you died for and whether or not you lost your integrity. This is from the beginning of To Pray prologue. Yeah, standing up for what you believe. And he's got another good point here. We are all going to enter that gate, death, regardless. Yeah, I mean, 80 years plus. I mean, it's not that long.
I know the world sees death as the greatest evil or the greatest bad that can happen to you. That's not what Christianity teaches at all.
No, it's how you live.
Yeah. Losing yourself, losing your soul, that is the worst.
So you talked about the Roman Empire being an example. We have another example, and that is, how about the Greeks?
Greeks, another great example.
Yeah. The ancient, now we're talking ancient Greeks, not current day Greeks. The ancient Greek city-states such as Athens experienced periods of decline where social and moral standards shifted dramatically. In Athens, there was a notable acceptance of, and I'm probably going to pronounce this word wrong, pederasty, the relationship between adult men and adolescent boys. It was the thing. It was the, we guys say G-rated here, but, and other forms of sexual sin that deviated from lifelong monogamous marriage. While marriage was still a social institution, it was not often centered on emotional sexual fidelity. The concept of marriage began to lose traditional role in society, and the focus of personal pleasure and the erosion of traditional family values contributed to social fragmentation, weakness, and cohesion of the city-states, making them more susceptible to external conquests, such as the Macedonians under Philip II and Alexander the Great. So we see that happening there with the Greeks. We see it happening with the Romans. How about, this was a little surprising to me. I didn't realize this until I researched a little bit more. Weimar Republic. So this is pre-World War II Germany. This is after the Treaty of Versailles from World War I. They got their butts beat. They were handed this great debt that they had to pay off for World War I, and they had no way to do it. And they just started the money printing machines. Their society collapsed. They're looking for all sorts of reasons. They're ticked. They're angry that they lost World War I. And following World War I, the Weimar Republic in Germany experienced significant social and cultural upheaval. Berlin, in particular, became known for its sexual attitudes towards sexuality, its liberal attitudes, including the proliferation of cabarets, nightclubs, and open displays of homosexuality and other sexually deviant behaviors. The traditional views of marriage and family were challenged with increasing acceptance of divorce and alternative lifestyles. There you go. There's a phrase for you.
Yeah.
Back in the 1930s in pre-Nazi Germany. The perceived moral decline contributed to social instability as one of the factors that extremists such as Nazis exploited and gained power, promising a return to traditional values. We look at that and say, oh, they were bad because they were traditionalists. No, that's just had gone so far the other extreme that anybody offering a lifeline to say, let's get back to the way things were, people would follow. And that's a caution to the church too, because we got to be careful that anybody who sounds like they're giving the right answer, they might be, but what other kind of baggage goes with it? So we really need to keep on our guards on who to follow there. So checking the chat again real quick. Pagans had it. Paganism.
It's rife in paganism.
Yeah.
Sexual immorality is pretty prevalent.
Can you think of any other nation? I know you already answered this previously, but any other nation that fell because of moral decay?
Fell because of it directly related to moral decay.
It was a part of So it's one piece. It's not just the only piece, but it's one piece of the puzzle that goes into the decay of a culture and a society. Is that kind of falls in there too? I think that it's almost like we have a lowered immune system. As a person is dying, maybe their immune system is failing, and they become more and more susceptible to all sorts of illnesses. So it's just a matter of time. That's what this is like. To say, well, what caused the death? Well, there's multiple reasons, but this is the primary one. Other societies that may have fallen decay. I have one for this, but I'm going to check the chat for it.
I think there's one up here. I'm not familiar with them.
Had it.
I have no clue what that is.
I think you know what it is because you pointed it out.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if that contributes to any of the direct fall. So I don't know. As far as Islam goes, that's homosexuality and perversions like that have been since day one. I mean, Muhammad himself.
Well, if you look at maybe some of the Islamic empires that rose to power and how you would have people who would be in control, this would be almost for any great person of power. That got harems.
If you're looking for a great person of power, as far as before there, Alexander the Great would be another great example of that. Of course, Muhammad himself led himself to great excesses, including what eventually poisoned him and killed him. So that was a long period.
So I want to put this up here because we did talk about Greece, and this is talking about current day modern Greece. It says, unfortunately, Greece has been made modernized, and thereby from the top down, especially via mass media influence, the trend is becoming to turn to paganism, Hindu, hedonism, etc. I think this is a comment on Western culture. By and large, I think that we've all are facing the same type of thing. Sherry, good morning, Sherry. It's good to see you. I hope our hope is being normal in heaven. Yeah. So our standard is something different. We're talking about the shifting Overton window. It's like what's normal today is not going to be normal tomorrow. And if you look at a standard, there is some vault somewhere. I think it might be in France. There is the standard kilogram that's actually sealed, and it's here. This is the measurement of what a kilogram is by all other things measured by this. Now, I think there's other ways to actually measure that now mathematically to know what it is, but there is one standard to say this is it. If I remember correctly, and you can say that the same thing could be said about Christians. There is one standard upon which everything else is measured, and that is Jesus Christ. If we can use that standard, that does not shift. The book of Hebrews says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That standard does not change no matter what happens. I don't care what year it is. It doesn't matter. That standard is the same. Right?
Right.
Okay. So she's 100% correct. And early church also had a paradigm shift. Paganism was the majority. Changing for them was a gradual shift over hundreds of years, but those hundreds of years, the thousands came faith through the empire. And wow, we've got all sorts of followers of
Mo and Islam.
Yes. Okay. So I think we see a trend here, and I just want to wrap it up with one last thing, and that is going to. Boy, we hit these other ones here, and I miss having that headline. Benefits of being different. we've seen all this. We see what's in the world. This is nothing new to any Christian who has been awake and outside his or her door in the last 50 years to know that there has been a change and a shift, and we all need to stand up for what's right. Noah, in Genesis 6 and 9, Noah's obedience to God and building the ark despite societal mockery. We had these examples before us. We are not alone in doing this. Daniel, in the first chapter, refused to eat what was laid before him in the king's or Nebuchadnezzar's feast. He said all this kind of stuff, and Daniel said, no, I can't do that. There's some things there I can't eat. And then chapter 6, with standing up against, you got the fiery furnace, and chapter 7, I believe, is with the lions, being thrown into the lions, and all these occasions saying, no, we will not conform. We will not bow to the king's image or anything that the world has thrown against us. Jesus himself, Mark 15, 1 through 15, Luke 23, 13 through 25. Jesus is standing against the religious structures of the day and also the political authorities of his time, saying, no, these things are wrong in what's happening. So we have all these examples that can go on. We are called to persevere, to continue going through this. So this is meant to be an encouragement for all of us. We have an opportunity to make a positive impact on the society around us. Bottom line, if you are different because of your moral fortitude, your strength, and not because of your moral weaknesses or your failings, then embrace it. Embrace being different as a positive and necessary stance for personal integrity, spiritual growth, and changing the world for Jesus. It is a call for all Christians, and we're not alone.
Nope, not the only one.
We had a poll taken, and the poll was the movie should we do next? And Arrival, your
Darn
baby.
It. I thought it was a 50-50 split there.
No,
when I looked, it was 50-50.
It's 2-1. So Arrival is going to get it. We're going to be doing Arrival as a watch party. So next Tuesday night, if you get a chance, if you have not seen Arrival, check it out, and then we will review it together, looking for Christian themes that are in there that we can use these as a message or a parable to a dying world.
Maybe this isn't as bad as I remember it.
It might be. It might be a terrible movie, but that is the one we're going to do. We're going to do this after party.
Yay.
Arrival is it. And so I want to make sure that we hit it. Thanks again for the chat and all the input that we got from you guys. You are what makes this channel really gives the potency behind this channel and a lot of the discussions that go on. And we want to be able to find these things, want to be able to find these messages that we can bring across to the world. So until Arrival, have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.